Anyway, welcome everyone to Tech Breakfast. Barry's going to take it over from here because I'm likely to lose my voice in the next couple of minutes. So take it away, Bear.
Thanks, Tony. Just a reminder, this is going to be the last Tech Breakfast this year. And the other part two of that is that the one in January happens to fall on the first day of the NAMM show. I don't know what we're going to do there. I'm kind of busy on that day.
We'll have to figure that one out.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that one out. Stay tuned. So here we have Terry from Equitech. And if you can share the photo, let me see if I can share my screen here. This is a very important device, kind of one of those things that no one wants to see here.
Joe's logged in, by the way.
Sweet.
You see that at all? Does everyone see that?
That is nice.
So that's what it looks like. There's not much really to talk about it, but that's the unit Model Q. Is it the Q2Q? I'm going to stop the share now.
Yeah, so there's the 2RQ and then the 2R. Kind of like Porsche, they're the more letters, the more expensive. But for this caliber of professionalism, I just usually talk about the 2RQ because of the efficiency, the lower impedance, the fact that the transformer's quiet, you can have it in your room with you. The 2R, it's kind of an entry-level product. It's still a great product, but it just doesn't have the high performance that the 2RQ does. So
I see Joe is here.
Hey, Joe.
And Joe also works at Equitech, and he's actually at the AES show.
So I am.
He is there, and it looks like you're in a room. You're not on the floor with all the people running around you, huh?
Oh, that would have been a bit intrusive. The noise floor up there is impossible. So I'm down here in one of the lower assembly areas. So I'm here. Hi, Terry.
Awesome. So Joe is going to tell us about the this box you just saw, the Equitech Model Q2 or 2Q2, which is a balanced power. Let's take it away, Joe. Just explain, take it from the beginning, like we don't know anything, which is not far from the truth.
Well, as Terry was telling you, the 2RQ is one that has more of a RF rejection capability, but basically of the same lineage. The transformer is the transformer. And we like to think that all Equitechs are created equal with minor differences in their design and power capacities. But for the most part, most people that use them, and I was just speaking to a couple of people upstairs about this, and the thing is that in my tenure of installing Equitechs, which has been since probably the past 25 years, never once has anybody ever come to me and said, you know what, I really don't get it. You got to take it back. Never once. So that to me is the affirmation from the audio, whether it be from professional audio people or students that are trying to have a better recording environment for their mixed room, what have you. Equitech stands alone in its ability to be able to be sonically more pure, ability to operate in a domestic power environment that is mostly corrupted, whether it's in a metropolitan area like here in New York, or whether it's in some rural area where power can be somewhat dicey. This is about clean power and the ability to be able to provide it all the time. And my favorite expression, and I've said it off the top of my head once, and it's the truth, it's like racing fuel to a Ferrari. It'll ride on 87 octane, but to have this in your mix is the way everybody should be operating. And I don't understand why more people don't get it. Yeah, it's expensive, but not really. When you think of the amount of money that people are spending on tube microphones and outboard gears, this to me is a no-brainer for those people that are here and trying to be able to make a better sound.
So Joe, tell us what balanced power is. I'm looking for a schematic that you guys, not a schematic, but a block diagram that you sent. I'm trying to find it. What does it do? It's kind I think of it as like the difference between balanced audio and unbalanced audio, right?
It stands unique in the way that it deals with power. It takes 60 volts and puts it on what is essentially the neutral on domestic power and 60 volts on the high. Thereby doing this, it allows the bridge rectifier in any piece of audio equipment that we've ever listened to, whether it's a tube radio or a DAC converter, they all have bridge rectifiers. As a result, these bridge rectifiers are prone to something called common mode rejection. And the level of common mode rejection in devices all the way across the board has everything to do with the way it sounds. That's why it does what it does. How it does it has to do with the way the transformer is designed and created. Martin Glassman, the inventor and our founder, designed this transformer in a way that I really don't know how it's come to be sooner, but he figured it out. It's obviously, as most toroidal transformers operate, they both have an outer phase characteristic from its primary side. So the secondaries are always out of phase. That's endemic in all toroidals. However, the fact of using 60 volts on one side and 60 volts on the other with respect to the transformer's ground is what is unique about that. How it does that is proprietary to the design of the transformer. And I don't know if I can really tell you how they do that, but it's in the windings. It's the way the transformer is contrived, but they're all, and once again, I've been installing them for a long time, and I've gone back and seen ones that I have installed 15 years ago, and they're still operating to the point that the engineer wouldn't allow it to leave their facility even if you asked them to. So it's all about how it's designed and how much people love it.
Does this one have any kind of UPS ability, or is that a separate box?
That is a separate box. The transformer is exclusively to develop balanced power within it. There are other things that we put in front of it, UPSs, power conditioners. We have no problem with that. It's just as long as the Equitech is playing nicely with the power that your gear is getting, all things will be wonderful.
I assume they're made for both America and Europe for 220, 240 voltages, I assume, yeah. And what is this one we're looking at, the Equitech? What is that one rated at kVA? Is that it's 2 kVA, right? 2000 watts. Okay, so you're looking at how much current at 120 volts?
I think it's 16.5 amps.
Okay, you have to talk a little slower. You cut out. What'd you say?
16.5 amps. So it's good for most facilities with a Pro Tools rig and a pair of speakers, power amplifiers. Anything more, we like to see them go up to the next level of power consumption, whether that be 3RQ, 5RQ, but also so goes the numbers, the cost factor. So for me, the starter one being what they are is a good way to get people involved in it. As the facilities grow, then of course, so should the Equitech. And Terry will be able to tell you more about pricing and such on that, but yes.
And how much is this single unit, just one of them? And could you run several of these in a rack, stack them up and power your whole studio conceivably? In other words, add them as you go?
Yes. Yeah, you can, we basically look at it as kVA and logistics. So if you have multiple racks spread out throughout your room, you're not going to want to run extension cords everywhere to power everything. Like Dion No ID has a couple for his racks in Republic or wherever his space is, and he just has two RQs, and they're both split between his, I think they're powering one side of his speakers and then his outboard gear, and then the other one is powering the other side. And that just worked logistically, but once you get past 40 or 50 amps, it's more cost effective to get a wall panel if you can get it installed. So 5 rack units is way more expensive than one 10 kVA wall panel.
So if you had a studio complex with 4 or 5 studios, you would get that wall panel you're talking about.
Absolutely. It's
And they
much
would
more
all run
cost
on that.
effective. It's cleaner. You know, and if you have the ability to do that, you're probably running new circuits isolated audio circuit separate from your pumps, lights, and motors. And you can do your twisted pair, in wall cable and isolated grounds. That's the ideal.
So Terry or Joe, can you walk us through, I mean, how much of your system should be running on this? Is it just your A to D converters? Is it your amps? Is it your, compressors? How much of this should be running on your system?
I believe that when we're specifying a studio, everything should be on balanced power. Even your flat screens, even the blacks on flat screens turn out to be even more depth. Any place that there's a amplifier that is using a bridge rectifier or converter, it belongs there. Tube microphone, guitar amplifiers. I will tell you that there are certain situations where certain analog tape recorders don't really play nice with an Equitech simply because of their own design, but that's an anomaly. But other than that, anything in a recording studio that we want to sound clean should have it. We, in order for utility purposes, we can run additional power off of a rack unit to power perhaps your tube microphone in your live room or in your booth. That's not out of the question. That's just for the sake of necessity. But definitely tube amplifiers. Any place where there is voltage conversion for high voltage for tubes, it's the greatest thing.
You're making me want one.
In every way. And so when you get it, let's say you get one, you put one in. If you have multiple racks on a system, you plug those multiple racks into, say, the 2RQ, and then everything is powered from there. So it's just basically powered from the wall, and then you tap out from there. Is that how it works?
Yes. And it requires no calibration. It's plug and play. Take it out of the box and plug it in. How you configure your studio is completely up to you. Like Terry's saying, there are clients that have multiple Equitechs within a certain area. That definitely works well. I mean, that's the greatest part. If you want to do that, but it's a question of how far into the system you go. But I will say that when I demo them and I bring them into an engineer's facility, even just plugging the speakers in and the DAC and maybe their volume control unit, that will be enough to be able to give people the idea of what they're listening to. We're not going to reinvent their studio in order to do a demo, but it's that easy. I've had people come in and say, before I think my ears are playing tricks on me, let me play something else. And as soon as somebody says that to me, I know they're getting it. They know that something's happening here on a mix that they've been working on for days and days, and all of a sudden the Equitech comes in and things sound different. How is that different? Spatiality, the ability for high frequencies and low frequency transients. Everything comes a little bit easier to the system because the Equitech is in the play. I can't even, I wish I had, a way of remembering every time that this has happened, because I just wait for it. I just sit there and say, unless the guy's trying to be a jerk, but then again, the device precedes itself. It just something like, holy shit, what just happened? And you'll see. I mean, I have two guys up on the show, people, old friends of mine, a guy by the name of Alan Silverman. He's a mastering engineer, and who was it also? Bob Clearmountain I walked into, by the way, today, just now. I gave him a card also. So, everybody's got to be able to have a chance. From the most nubile engineers all the way up to the masters of our industry are using this thing, and everybody loves it.
I did a demo in Miami recently at a place called Alacran. It's this really nice, the Latin label, all Italian, marble, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, one of the engineers, he did a 2RQ demo just with, I think it was the same thing. It was his DAC and his mains. And he's like, I have 20, 30, 40 hours in this song, and I've never heard this song before. I've mixed this song.
I've heard that.
Like, I've never heard this song. This is a brand new song. He's like, I'm hearing stuff that I hadn't heard. And that's one thing we've been trying to get from, we started as more science-based, kind of got into anecdotal for a while because we were riding the wave, and now we're getting back into a lot of science. But the anecdotal stories that we have, like countless of people that are saying they're mixing faster because the distortions that they were hearing were phasing out, lower octaves. Like I had one client, he had ATC 25s and he wasn't getting the low end he wanted. And he's like, I have to get 45s. I have to get 45s. And to ATC's dismay, I got him a rack unit and he found that low end octave that was gone because of the phasing from his electricity. And so he got a whole nother octave. And so he didn't have to get new mains, which ATC was not happy with, but I was happy to help him. And he's still ultimately down the road going to get 45s. But that to say is he's like, I just thought it was my mains, but in reality, I hadn't even thought about electricity until there's an engineer studio designer in New York City named Christos. And that's his whole thing is lower impedance, higher efficiency. And it's the micro moves of 0.5 degree or 0.5% increase, from this component or this cable, or he gets into some wild stuff. But he says, if you look at the non-sexy first, you can get better results out of the sexy stuff. And that's why we exist.
Got a quick question on this. At one time I was a Furman rep, and I was wondering if there's proprietary technology in this that differs from some of the other manufacturers like Furman or Black Lion, some of these other companies that do power conditioners, balance power, etc.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the market, we have power conditioning, which most people in the market put everybody in the same basket. But inside that market, there's balance power and there's other methods to try to achieve highest amount of transient available power, lowest amount of distortion. So just comparing apples to apples with balance power, you have Furman, you have a couple companies that don't exist anymore, you have a couple Chinese knockoffs, one UK, and then Equitech. Taurus is in the category of us. Furman is in our category just in the sense that they use an isolation transformer. The difference in proprietary are the amount of windings, the lacquer, the gauge of the copper or the gauge of the wire in the transformer. There's a few things that are like the recipe. So for example, we just recently, I'm getting ready to release a report on a comparison between a Furman IT 2400 and an Equitech 2RQ. And what we did was we printed stereo mixes from the wall, from the Furman, and from the Equitech. And then we did null tests to see what frequencies were being canceled out, right? So it's a really cool, like we're trying to drill into the science, like I said. But I thought my thesis was that through the null test and the stereo mixes that it would be in the upper register, like 10 to 18K kind of stuff. But we were seeing information down into like 5K area that was being phased out because of the distortion of electricity. And so we all have the power conditioning bucket, but Furman, Taurus, and Equitech have different approaches and they sound different. Like we've emailed these files to different people and said, what do you hear? And they heard a difference between the products in just a stereo mix through an email file, which is pretty wild. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, it does. I was wondering, as just kind of a side thought here, I understand how this would deal with all the things that you're speaking of as far as, noise, transients, et cetera. Does it have any effect? Have you seen any measurable effect on the possibilities of clock jitter? Does it do anything to assist in those areas?
100%. The digital filtration through the EMI and RF filter, we've seen significant decline in jitter. In clocking, I was working with James Fluff. He works in the corn camp in Bakersfield. And he was doing tests for me, comparing clocks to the wall, clocks to Furman, clocks to Equitech. And he's the one that started doing that first null test a little while ago. I think it was like 3 months ago. But he said the same thing, that he was zooming in and seeing a better alignment in that area because of the digital filtration. So in the back of our unit, there's 3 duplexes that are white and then 2 that are gray. The 2 that are gray are connected to an EMI RF filter, and that's what cuts out about 60% of the jitter. So he was going back and forth between the unfiltered and the filtered and the wall and comparing. He was trying out like Grace and Antelope and a couple other companies that he'd been messing with. And what was it?
Rosetta.
Yeah. Yeah. If you ever, I'm trying to get his stuff published too, but it's been hard getting publishing rights to different songs because we're using files that we don't have rights to. And so presenting that so people can listen to it has been a little bit difficult.
But in the big picture, whenever you make these distinctions and you really want to listen to it, you actually have to bring it into your home and listen to it. Because that becomes the moniker. When people that are working on music that they become intimately associated with, and then they make this all of a sudden this huge difference because of the nature of the electricity coming in. That to me is why I love doing this, because it makes everybody's life so much better. This is a game changer for so many people.
So Joe, is there a unit available in LA for us to pass around?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we have a gentleman, there are 3 of them. Yeah. We have somebody in the LA area that will drive an Equitech to your house. And you can make your distinctions then, for sure.
I guess we're out of excuses, Barry.
I wasn't going to say anything, but they've offered to send one over here, and I don't know, I just get really busy lately, and I'll try it,
Well, forget about sending it to Barry's house. Send it to my studio.
No, I listen, I understand kind of the technology. I have to kind of one eye some of this thing about clock and all this other stuff because that's kind of hard to believe. But if you say so, okay. I mean, clocking is not supposed to be at all
Affected
to the power supply at all.
I agree, and that's what makes it so staggering that this can make a difference.
So, quick question here. So, in terms of the impact that this has had that can have on power amplifiers, speakers, anything else, is this stuff that we can objectively observe? So, you're talking about differences in distortion of various components. Is that something we can, test and objectively observe? Because obviously, this isn't a thing I can put in my system and A/B back and forth. So, I'd have to install, wait 15 minutes, etc.
So that's a great question. That's what we're working on with these null tests. For a while, people were just testing the unit, not under load, right? But you actually have to put an oscilloscope on the product that's being fed from the Equitech in order to see. So what we've been doing, one of the best in the field tests that I've seen was brought to me by Christos, where we took powered mains and we plugged one into the wall and one into the Equitech. And there was a phasing that happened that was insane. You could change the mix. Like I was literally mixing a female vocal in and out by plugging one powered monitor into the wall, one into the Equitech, putting them both back into the wall and putting them both in the Equitech, and they would get out of phase, right? So they're in the wall together, they're in phase. In the Equitech together, they're in phase, but in the Equitech and the wall, they're out of phase. And the reason that we were deducting this was happening is because of the transient availability on the unit that was put into the Equitech, right? Information was a lot cleaner, there was less distortion. And so it added a phase effect because it was so efficient. A very efficient speaker was even more efficient than the one that was plugged into the wall. So that was a quick, like, you could hear it, like you could move vocals around. There was almost this singing into a fan effect, like a phaser. So it's a little bit anecdotal, but the null test is probably the better one, and that's with printing the stereo mixes. I personally don't know how to do it, but I know that Fluff has been teaching people.
What scenario we're using to print stereo mixes? Is this a full console mixed in the box with some outboard? What was that scenario?
It was the least amount of gear as possible. It was a computer. I think it was a computer. Oh, sorry. Just a second.
Also, did you print
Decline.
the mix twice? So in other words, you said you compared the mix this way and with the balance power inserted. I want to know, did you null out the mix the same recording? You know, you recorded it twice and then nulled that out. You follow
Well,
me?
we did. Yeah, we didn't record it twice. We printed it twice.
Whatever. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, did you print or record the mix twice and then got the null with those two?
That's
Okay.
correct.
And then you substitute one of those passes with the same mix with the balanced power in place. Is that the way you did it? Or
Yeah.
you just went straight from the regular mix to balanced power? Because there's a bunch of things that can be different between those two
Sure.
things beyond
kind of-
balanced power.
Yeah, what kind of outboard was involved in this scenario?
I need to get him to email me his outboard gear list. And that's something that I could provide to you guys. This is all in the last few months, right? We've been working on the publishing rights to be able to let people, you know, experience this. But we did our first digital demo in the history of the company in the last 3 months, where we sent these files to someone and said, what do you think? And they said, I'll take one. So I can get that. Like, this is the stuff that needs to be documented to say, here's the controls, here's the test, here's the thesis, here's, you know, the replication. And so these are great questions.
So I am very interested in this because I am literally in a cabin in the middle of the woods, and the power out here absolutely sucks. I've been experiencing something that is a real mystery to me lately, that I wonder if any of you guys in this Zoom thing have run into. I think it has something to do with a virtual instrument plugin. I'm getting this little, it almost sounds like some sort of a buildup, and then all of a sudden I noticed it in my subwoofer is this little kind of fit kind of sound that happens. I thought it was the subwoofer. I thought maybe the amp on the subwoofer was failing, until I realized that when I hear this sound, I see it on my meter in the workstation. And there is absolutely nothing. Everything, all inputs are muted. There's nothing in record, so there's nothing coming in from the outside. This is literally being generated by Logic, and maybe one of the plugins or something. Has anyone run into any weird stuff like that? This is just, and of course, you know, troubleshooting it is really tough. I have no idea where this is coming from.
Do you have any kind of livestock farms nearby?
No, not per se, no.
Sometimes the electric fencing used in livestock can actually affect the power in a rural community.
The
Would be
DC.
interesting. Yeah.
Yes, that has been my case as well. We had a client in a very up-end neighborhood in upstate New York, and their neighbors came home after being away for several months, and all of a sudden the studio was going berserk. And I drove past the guy's house, and the dogs were running around on the other side of the fence. And I went into the studio and I heard what he was hearing, and it sounded like cellular packets coming about. And then I said, I think it's the dog fence. And this is before I knew about Equitech, but that would be one of those moments. But I did go over and unplug the dog fence, and the problem went away. So you're absolutely
That's
right.
really interesting. Yeah, I have noticed that it tends to be worse when I first power up, when I come into the studio fresh in the morning. And then as time goes on, it seems to be less and less frequent. And it's also when things are just sitting there static. Now, I will say that right now, I don't have my workstation up, and I haven't heard the sound. So it is definitely happening from the DAW. And I mean, I've got a pretty decent IO. It's an Apollo X8P, but it doesn't seem to be coming from that side. It literally, like as I say, is being generated from from Logic somehow.
I don't know for certain, Craig, but that definitely sounds to me like it's a power related thing.
Yeah,
I mean, especially because you're up in the middle of nowhere
I suspect
Oregon,
you're right.
you know?
Yeah.
The only way to know is to try an Equitech.
Any,
What did you say the cost
you
is?
guys have dealers or reps up in the Puget Sound area? I'm out in Western Washington.
What did you say the cost on these units are? Single units?
2RQ is 6,900 retail. And Craig, let me see who I can find up in your area.
Great, thank you.
Well, it is made in Oregon, so it's not that far away.
So what's the difference between the 2R and the 2RQ?
That you want to go, Joe, or you want me to?
Yeah, you go for it, Terry. Go for it.
So the 2R is the entry level transformer. It's slightly louder acoustically in the room. It doesn't have our low node technology that we partnered with Plytron for. So the 2RQ is acoustically quiet in a room. The 2RQ has better efficiency, lower impedance than the 2R. Even to the quality of the parts, like the breakers are double the size in the 2RQ as they are in the 2R. It's a good beginning to get into balanced power, the 2R. But as far as if you have really high-end efficient speakers, high-end gear, high-end clock, you're going to get much better mileage out of the 2RQ. If you're running, KRKs and a little Scarlett, you're not going to get as much bang for your buck with a 2RQ as you are with a 2R. The efficiency of some monitors is just, capped out.
It's because it seems like the QR, the lesser one is 39 and the more expensive one is 69.
That's
so
correct.
you're just it's basically better parts. That's what you're buying. Is that it?
It's a completely different transformer, even though it's both balanced power. And balance just means it's 120 volt coming in on a single leg with a neutral, and then 120 volt split with no neutral anymore. That's balanced power. So they're both balanced power transformers, but the quality, the efficiency, the impedance, like I said, if your room is rated, $15,000 to $20,000 or more in gear, you're going to get a much better performance out of the 2RQ.
Well, what you mean to say really is that if you have expensive gear, it's more apt to be interfered with more easily. So you get more benefit from the balanced power. I'm having a little trouble with some of your explanations. I'd like to see a white paper. I mean, and you're talking about better clocking and all this stuff like that. It just doesn't follow for me anyway. I'm sorry, but if you have some kind of technical thing I can read that proves some of these things.
Did you get the data sheet I sent over?
No.
It's in the chat room.
It's in the chat, and then I emailed it to you.
Okay, let's look at. Go ahead. I'll buzz off.
I know. I mean, it's not. Terry, I would love to be able to try it and see. I mean, I've got a brand new room, and I haven't run into any anomalies like that. But you're in Studio City, California, and so, there's always some kind of power drain on your system. So.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, listen, Madison, don't decide to come back. I'm hoping to bring my cards to the sister, okay?
I think that's you, Joe.
I'm looking to get all changed.
I think that's you. Your mic's picking up somebody in the room there.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's a little bit of a noisy environment.
I mean, I have a 5G tower that's hanging like 200 feet from my door.
Oh, my apologies.
So I'm just wondering, was this going to help clean it up a little bit? You know what I mean?
That's the thing that I'm having trouble with, because you're trying to say to people, to me anyway, that this thing is going to cure all your RF intrusions like Tony's 5G tower nearby, or a CB radio or AM radio, or a noise that's in the air, RF, in other words.
That is I'm not here to tell you that, because we all know that those kind of levels of that kind of amplification is something we all have to deal with on a regular basis.
Well,
this is within the system, within your own environment.
I get that things riding in on the power line or on the neutral are problematic. I get that, and I know that you would probably get a big increase or betterment, a lower noise floor, if you were to run balanced power. If you had something riding up your neutral, which is very possible, coming off the transformer for my house is right there. It's 100 feet away on the pole. So I'm kind of lucky in that respect. The 240 is coming in, and I have 4 ground rods driven in the ground, you know, the whole thing about that stuff. So my problem is that you're kind of attributing this thing to save everything, to fix everything all at once, if you buy the $6,900 box. So I'd like to see some
I'm glad you brought that up. No, if that's what you feel like has been communicated, that's on our end for not clearly communicating. So I apologize for that. The amount of variables that each studio in each part of the country
absolutely sure
is insane. So an example of that Joe went out to fix, we sent a unit out to downtown New York in a high rise and had the problem still afterwards. Turned out Joe found a drone manufacturing company that was 2 levels up that was shooting out the most insane frequencies you've ever seen. And
wait. Insane frequencies. You need to be specific about that. You mean they're on the 5G and what frequencies? Insane.
2.4 gigahertz.
There you go. See, for me, I don't know. I'm kind of, maybe it's my electronics.
Understood.
You know, that kind of stuff bothers me when you throw in words like that. Go ahead. I'm sorry to butt in.
That's okay. So the 2RQ was not promised to cure. It was part of a solution, which was we need to have all the facts, we need to troubleshoot, and we need to know exactly what's going on. And he didn't purchase one, but we helped him. Joe helped him figure out his problem.
Well, that's very, very nice. Wow.
You see what I'm saying? So
yeah.
if we communicated, you know, poorly that this is a magic box, that's, you know, that's not what we're about. We're about improvement all the way around. If it's our product, if it's a best practice, if it's a solution, if it's troubleshooting, doesn't matter what it is.
And by the way, the RF suppression on the better transformers are for the transformer itself, not to induce around its perimeter. If you're putting a transformer like that in a rack where there's sensitive equipment in it, the shielding on these 2RQ transformer is severely enhanced by that. That's what this is. If you saw
it, is it wrapped in mu metal? How is it enhanced? It sounds to me like this thing should be in the other room, or at least far away somewhere.
That's true, you would say, but the improved transformer has a belt literally around the perimeter of the transformer that goes to ground, which is not there on the 2R. That's all it is. It's just a better way of controlling EMI.
Also, you said the transformer is noisy, so the laminates are vibrating. Is that why it's noisy? It makes a buzz.
Correct. Well, the quiescent noise level of the transformer itself on the 2RQ is substantially lower than it is on the 2R. But does that matter in most cases? If you've got a machine room or you're not, look, if a 2RQ is in a rack that is to your right on your mix position, are you going to hear it? I don't know, maybe, but I mean,
it's louder than a fan, I would think, a cooling fan.
There you go. That's a good.
Louder than that, and I have 6 of those running. I switch them off when I'm not using them. Those little whisper fans, you know, little 5-inch.
Little boxer fans.
Yeah, boxer fans, exactly.
Yeah, that's all. Just these are situational arrangements within your mix in your room. I mean, let's be real. There is a certain amount of realism that has to be considered, but I think that anything that you might think that is questionable about it, you have to try it. And we're trying to have enough demos around to have individuals like yourselves to actually come and listen, and we'll bring it to you and listen to it within I mean, I have one here on the East Coast that I'm about to bring to other people, and I have them. You know, and this is for people that are serious enough that they're going to put down the coin to do this. You're absolutely entitled to listen to it. I mean, that's how much faith we have in the product.
Hey, I'm a believer.
I would love to check one out personally.
You should get one to Tony.
Yeah, because especially because I got a brand new room, and it's just, you know, and I've done enough vocal recordings in the room now to have a distinction about what, you know, what's going on with the room. So I would love to find out, but I'm based in Studio City. So if you guys got one, I would love to try it out.
Does today work?
There you go.
For real.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm
Well,
free
mate.
between now and 4.
Yeah. Works for us.
I mean, you know,
those things
next
weigh?
week might be better, but yeah.
How
I
much
mean,
those
Barry
things
could come
weigh?
over, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be fun. What are your mains there behind you?
Westlakes. And they're powered by Bryson's, and my subwoofer I had to take in is a brand new QSC subwoofer, and it had a bad fan on it. I shot a video of it and took it in to QSC, and they were like, yeah, that's a weird anomaly, so just bring it in. So I had to drive down to Costa Mesa. What Barry was at, like 2 days ago on Tuesday or something, and they've got to replace it because it's literally a brand new unit and the fan has failed already. So but yeah, I'm hoping to have all that stuff back next week. But I would love to be able to try something because I you know, you're in a room, you're in a building with other people, and there's 5G around you, and there's all kinds of stuff. There's a tower hanging off the side of a place over here, and you know, I would just love to be able to clean up the audio as much as possible.
Cool. I'll get your contact info here after we're done, and I can set that up with Sky. And he can
That'd be
over there.
great. Thank you.
No problem.
And Barry's maybe 10 minutes from me at the most. So maybe he could come by and check it out. We could listen to it together or something.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good plan.
I like that.
Good.
Or
Excellent.
anybody else who wants to come over. Sean's like 20 minutes from me. I mean, most of the guys here, you know, when Ronan's in town, he's probably an hour from me, but
I'd love to come by, but the commute would kill me.
yeah, that's a bit of a commute for you, Craig. But
Yeah.
anybody else who's, you know, Jason, or, you know, I mean, anybody who wants to come in and check it out, there'd be, you know, it would be great to be able to sit down and listen to it, and to be able, but as Ronan pointed out, it's not really, you can't really A/B something like that. You have to unplug everything and replug everything in order to hear it. But it would be really interesting to try out.
So this unit would be after my UPS. Is that correct? The way I would do it, Joe?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. I was thinking. I was thinking it'd be pretty easy to do let the UPS run the studio and then AB the transformer. My UPS is only hooked up for the computer and the monitor and the Pro Tools equipment. That's all it runs.
Interesting, AV.
Yeah.
Here's a goofy question, Joe, but if you have, you know, I've got a control room and then an ISO. My ISO it seems crazy to have, or overkill to have a 2RQ just for like microphones or anything like that. If it's just, you know what I mean? It's just a mic in the other room. It's running headphones and a mic. So
That's what I had said. All you need to do is do some sort of a quality extension or interconnection between that, and you will get the benefit of it. I mean, is it a standard Home Depot extension cord? I don't make those distinctions. Not be that you know, myopic about this. As long as balance power is on the line for a tube microphone or for your guitar amp in a live room, absolutely. It's only, what can it be? 15 feet or something? It's got to make a difference, and you will hear it. I mean, I'm confident that you will notice a difference.
I'm game, guys. Anybody want to, you know, come by and hang? That I think that'd be fun to do.
Well, Sky Hamilton is our man on the street in your area, and he's very, very He's not just a salesperson. He is an engineer and he's got a huge, father was a recording engineer. He's been a recording engineer his whole life. His life is music. So you will not be just dealing with somebody delivering something. He has great input to it. And by the way, he's had an Equitech for over a decade himself.
On his Putnam board.
Yeah, on his Bill Putnam console. Right. Let's stop making it.
Hey, Tony and Barry, if you guys do it, do this demo, if you don't mind sharing with the group afterwards, that'd be great. Kind of a real detailed.
Yeah,
Snap.
absolutely. You know, I told Barry this morning before, you know, I talked to Barry an hour ago and said, you know, if you've got any new microphones to try, let's give it a buzz, and no pun intended, and just see what happens, because it would just be great to bring over some stuff. My ISO is 330 square feet, so it's not really an ISO as much as a full bore recording room, but it's a great sounding room, and yet it's still very intimate. So I'm like, dude, just bring over the microphones. Let's plug them in and see what we got going, you know?
Well, let's be clear. Let's try to keep it at a quiescent point where you guys know what you're listening to. Don't try to bring too many things into the mix, but you guys understand the concept here. You know, I mean, trying to be able to make the most impact with the most, less the variables you got. But go for it.
Yeah. If you could get us in touch, Barry or Joe, that would be great. And then, you know, maybe we could do it set up for next week, and let's see who we can get in, you know.
That's fine.
See how many guys we can get over and come out and check it out. I would just love to be able to make that happen.
I put my phone and email in the chat for you guys, or Barry can get it out there too.
Yeah, great. Actually, Tony's studio is in a higher, what do you call it, noise area than my place here. I'm kind of lucky that way. He's right off of Ventura Boulevard. I can't imagine the crap that's around the line and in the air, and and also on the street.
What are you trying to say, Barry?
Anytime, I'll come over and check it out. Sure.
No, I really think it would be a great test, because, you know, there's 5 rooms in this building, and so Sean used to have a room here. I mean, you know, it would be an interesting test for people to come over, and there's enough room in the control room for everybody to sit and listen to it. And like you said, you can't A/B it, but you could certainly tell if it's something that's been cleaned up. So yeah.
I can't say I'm anything more than happy about that. I'm not nervous about this, and I know you guys are going to love it. And it's great to hear people that really understand this are as a commercial in New York used to say, an educated consumer is our best customer.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
John put an interesting question in the chat, if one of you guys want to read that.
Yeah, I was just typing back, but I like answering. So it sounds like you have a large commercial isolation transformer, 24 by, I mean, these are measurements, dimensions, but I assume it's probably a 10 or 15 or 20 kVA ISO transformer.
That's a big transformer for that kind of kVA. This is only 2 kVA, this box, by the way, John.
Yeah.
Part
24 by 30 by 20. That's a big boy. So there's an isolation transformer that's been around since the 1800s, which they developed for phone lines because they were getting interference. What we did is we took a traditional isolation transformer and rewound it to where the output is balanced, just like you would get 220, 240 volt. So plugging in an Equitech 2RQ into an ISO transformer, you won't have issues. When you start getting into larger format transformers, you can get a little bit of inductance, and that's where we would want to figure out exactly what you have. So if you were trying to plug in like a 10 kVA to another 10 kVA, we would need to talk about that. But your question probably because I'm thinking rack mount bond transformer. So we just did a test at Sweetwater, and they have these large kVA 3-phase transformers that are powering pretty much all of their facility, from the studio to the tech rooms to the offices. And we plugged a 2RQ into that, and that's where we were doing the A/B testing with the active monitors. And we were still hearing phasing even with the ISO transformer powering those outlets. So we were getting a little bit more mileage
You
out
mean
of
you
it.
were hearing phasing? Where?
So that's what I was telling you about the AB with the active monitors, plugging one into the wall and one into the Equitech. And the
Yeah, they're delayed by the amount of your unit. It's just like it's like a delay line. You think about it.
So let me ask you, why would a power conditioner delay electricity?
Because it takes time for the current to get through the box. It's not a
So-
lot of time, but it does take some time.
So it's actually the reverse. The transients were more available from the Equitech.
Wait a
than
minute, wait a
from the
minute.
wall.
Transients, that's a different subject. You said you got phasing.
Mhm.
Okay, so look, I don't want to take up everybody's time, but any process is going to take time. If everything arrives at the same time, then no one knows.
Exactly.
But
Correct.
if you have the left speaker coming straight off the line, I think you said, or through your box, and the right speaker coming off, in other words, there's a delay between those two speakers, and that's why you heard the phasing. Simple.
Right. Which is what I'm referring to.
Right. That's going to happen.
Right. So the transient availability from the Equitech was greater than the wall.
Well, how can you make the transient better than what's coming out of the wall already?
Well, this is where we get into the science of like the actual transformer. Like I had a
I don't
great,
think that that's possible with any transformer.
if maybe we could talk online of this. I had a good conversation with Bill Whitlock about the
Okay, well,
available- anyway,
okay, so I'm sorry, but I need to
That's okay.
talk to an engineer, a person that knows this stuff.
I tell you what, send a unit over and let's
Yeah.
check it out. Let's plug and play and see what we got going.
You got it.
That would be a great
Dig it.
thing to try.
Thanks so much, guys, for showing up. We're already like kind of overtime. I'm surprised you
Yeah.
guys kept everybody here.
This is
Well, that's-
awesome. Terry
that's
and Joe, thank you so much.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
for sure.
All right.
And you got my phone number, so
Yeah.
if you can, please call me and let's see if we can, get something together for next week. We can plug and
Next
play.
week,
and see
yeah.
what's going.
Let's
Yeah.
let's do that. I like it.
Guys, that's interesting stuff. Good stuff.
Joe,
Yeah.
I'd like to reach out to you if possible and chat with you a bit if I can.
Absolutely. Please.
Joe, you
And-
want to
and
put
His number's
your
in the chat.
I've got it. Yeah. Thanks, Tony.
Okay, cool.
Take care.
Cool. Thanks, y'all. Have a good Thursday.
Thanks everybody for coming to Tech Breakfast. We'll see you
Thank
all at
you,
the top of next
everybody.
year. I'll see you
Thanks for
soon,
inviting us.
Joe and Terry. Thanks so much for everything, y'all.
Yep.
Thank you,
See ya.
gentlemen.
All right.
Bye.
Ciao.